There's a lot further to go in places like Iran, but there are other places where the government is increasingly trying to restrict the internet and increasingly trying to restrict what people can do online, and working with activists in the same way that we promote democracy and strengthen democratic institutions, strengthening those same sorts of norms and institutions online, so that when governments make moves to restrict what people can have access to, that there is a community of people who understand the implications of that and can lobby for reforms that would prevent it.
Right, and private companies as well can play their part. I know Google switched from having Gmail was just a regular HTTP protocol to HTTPS, so all communication now by default is encrypted. And private companies can do a lot to increase the security of their tools. We have more...
It may be worth it. There's a shout out to the Global Network Initiative being a collection of human rights activists and companies that are beginning to look at those sorts of ways that companies can more effectively make sure that their tools are compliant with human rights needs.
Great. Go ahead.
My name is Nima. All right. My name is Nima Rashid, and I have two questions for Jan. Sir, do you think setting a budget like $22 million for circumvention tools and then the whole this anonymity and gadgets you're developing, is it first efficient and realistic against, for example, this is your whole budget, right? And as we know, Islamic Republic of Iran has invested $1 billion in their filtering machinery. They successfully, they just gave at least $650 million to their cyber army. They hacked Google, they hacked Twitter, they hacked Baidu, they got last 3 months, the issue with SSL certificates. This was the first time something like this ever happened. Do you think this is all realistic, what you do? And that's your whole global budget. This is my first question. And then second, what about we're talking about very good companies who are giving tools to activists like Facebook, Twitter, but I know not far from Palo Alto in San Jose, there is another American company, Smart Filter, which gave the foundation for Islamic Republic of Iran's successful filtering gadgets. So what shall we do with them? Thank you so much.
Can I help answer your budget question, though, a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, please.
One thought I do have on the budget question is what Ian was talking about. He's doing, I think so much can be done on education. And sometimes I do think that a small amount of education on users knowing how to protect themselves and knowing what SSL is and what VPN does, I do think the State Department has done some great work on just the education front, which you're not going to combat a huge technology infrastructure with $22 million, but I do think there's important work that could be done there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is just one of many areas where we're trying to bring the resources that we have to a very large problem, a problem that's much is many scales, requires a lot of effort, and trying to use it in smart ways to make the biggest impact that we can. And so it is sort of, in some ways, it is a David and Goliath initiative, and we're trying to make sure that if we're fighting with a slingshot, that our aim is dead on, and investing in smart ways. And so, as the Secretary mentioned in her February speech on Internet freedom, we are taking a venture capital approach to how we invest these funds, to try to invest them in smart new technologies that will have that will be able to be magnified and have a larger impact, rather than investing in in infrastructure. We're investing in new ideas that can help to that can help to create those things that are useful in the field and are useful to activists around the world. Another thing that isn't necessarily on the balance sheet that is of huge importance is just the creativity and ingenuity of people on the ground who want to have information and want to have their voices heard. And so what we're trying to do is make investments that leverage that and empower them to be able to fight those battles within their own countries.
So I just wanted to touch on this point of the last two questions are pretty much touching on the same idea, that the Iranian regime is ahead of the game, ahead of the curve on these sorts of discussions. So just a couple of days ago, there was a woman arrested in Saudi Arabia for driving. And there was a Twitter hashtag called Women to Drive that was set up, and a Free Manal group. Her name is Manal Sharif. And the Saudi government was accused by some people on the hashtag of setting up a counter-campaign on Twitter and on the internet to undermine the cause of Manal. And they used the traditional media as well, with state newspapers, to say that she was in prison where she currently is, that she collapsed psychologically and had recognized it was wrong for her to drive a car. So, she then subsequently smuggled a letter out from prison denying that. But the important thing that I wanted to say was that some regimes, as more and more of these uprisings succeed, some regimes, as the Iranian regime has done, and Islamists tend to always be ahead of the curve when it comes to technology anyway, more so than their dictatorial counterparts, some regimes will know how better to respond. And I think what we need to keep in mind is that, as you said, revolutions did occur before the social media, because what's crucial is communication. And I think that the advent of the social media has allowed us to communicate better, but the focus must remain on communication. And there are always plan Bs and plan Cs we must have in place to communicate, because the key thing is actually that the people on the ground want a revolution and they want to communicate with each other. Whether that happens through the social media, whether that happens through mobile telephones, or it happens through traditional pamphleteering, I think it's important to have these plans in place so that if the internet is shut down, if the mobile phone services are shut down, there are other ways that people can communicate with each other. Because I think the focus must remain on communication, and that's how what the social media brings to the debate is a better way to communicate. If we keep that in focus, we will always have contingency plans.
Majid, yes, actually I couldn't agree more. When we were analyzing the situation in Tunisia and Egypt, the key pattern in every single revolution, even in the one that happened in the States in the 60s during the Greensboro sit-ins that were analyzed by Malcolm Gladwell, communication was key. In the 60s, it was the newspaper. Now we get Twitter. But besides that, actually one of the things that I say permanently is that social media tools are just that, tools. They are not the panacea. They are not the ultimate answer to that. So even in Iran, technology can help. Definitely your work should be more directed to the grassroots, to the creation of people awareness. Because in the end, what you're dreaming of, and it's actually the same thing that I'm dreaming for Havana and Caracas, is 100,000 people out on the street. So if that's your goal, how you're going to make it has to go through it, through communication. Doesn't matter what tool you use. It doesn't matter if maybe today the efforts from the regime are too strong that they will block your Facebook and your Google, but you have to find the other ways, because in the end, the grassroots are there and you need to get them.
I think that's a great note to end on, and to thank the panel here for, you guys are brave and cutting edge work you're doing.
Thank you.
And please stay seated, panel. We're going to show a short video. So you are supportive of what is happening in the Middle East now. You think that's a good thing?
Now people have the real responsibility. Now, also the one sort of their sort of also the goal, change the system, achieved. Now they must carry sense of responsibility or commitment and build nation. And democracy, in the new democracy, freedom, and express all sorts of things, and doing either work, less work, and sometimes too much criticize each other, and a little bit chaotic situation. That's not good. Now work hard. There may be different views or different sort of also the ideology or different sort of also the belief. Okay, doesn't matter, but must work together and build new society. That's very important.
And that was His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, of course. And that was a clip from an interview that is part of the Freedom Collection, which will have its official debut at the end of this year. Again, a round of applause for the panel. Thank you so much, Minnie. And we're going to switch panel. You can get up. Okay. And will the next panel come up, please? I'm sorry?
Ezra will be jumping off as soon as she talks.
Okay, so we're going to edit her first. Okay. Who are we missing? Ahmed. Oh, he'll be right back. Okay, good. In January, brave and disciplined protesters in Tunisia and Egypt captured the world's attention as they took to the streets and toppled two long-standing dictators. And since then, other Arab regimes have been weakened or pressured to produce reforms. Still others have responded with brutality to the efforts of citizens demanding basic freedoms. Today, we're eager to know what kinds of governments will emerge and to help the forces of pluralism, moderation, and democracy succeed. Millions of men and women across the Middle East have contributed to the dramatic events of recent months, and we're delighted to welcome several of them to Dallas to share their personal stories of protest and activism and to help us understand the challenges and opportunities ahead for their countries. First, in Cairo, Ezra Abdel Fattah, the project's manager and the director of women's programs for the Egyptian Democratic Academy. Whoops, she just disappeared. And creator of the April 6th Strike group on Facebook. And she will join us via teleconference in just a second. There she is. Okay, and then let's see. On the far end is Ahmed Salat, whom you've already been introduced. Ahmed is a veteran Egyptian activist and co-founder of Kafia, which means enough, the pro-reform coalition. And Ahmed and I go back a few years. He was a participant in the December 2008 meeting in New York that we were able to put together, the instigation of the State Department that led to an organization called the Alliance of Youth Movements. And so we're very happy to see you again, Ahmed. Thanks for being here. Next is Muheb Ben Garoui, the president of the new Tunisian watchdog iWatch. And next is Kadia Arfawi, a scholar, a longtime advocate of women's rights. And finally, Amr Abdul Hamid, a Syrian democracy activist and blogger and founder and director of the Tharwa Foundation. I'm going to turn to Ezra first because I know that she is going to have to leave us shortly, correct?
Yes.
She's in Cairo, I think, at the embassy where it's quite late right now. Although in Cairo people stay out really late at night, but still. Ezra, in 2008, you created the April 6th Strike group on Facebook that mobilized 70,000 supporters of planned strikes in the city of Mahala al-Kobra. For your efforts, you were arrested, you were jailed. How did you apply the lessons of 2008? Because I don't think anyone believed in 2008 that within 3 years, Mubarak would be overthrown. How did you apply the lessons of 2008 to 2011? And let me ask one other thing. What compelled you personally to take that risk again? And I'm going to just sit down and listen to your answer.
Thank you first for making me participate in this panel. I need to just mention something first, that is the revolution in Egypt. It is not just a sudden event happened in 21st January, but I think it's a result or a lot of events and a lot of political movement happened from 2004 until Kafaya movement. Until 2011, all the movement and the political movement happened in the streets, which are the reason